about, I want to say that they're not like pelicans or something, but I just think it's sometimes foolish to think, as you said, all scientists basically accept this. And so this is their point zero for some of the questions that exist. But, the point of the story that they included in New York Magazine was that that's exactly what scientists were doing with this set of birds. And that everybody would assume that they were male and female, and no one actually checked the sex of the birds. So years and years and years went on with all of this information, and it was all incorrect. And it was this pair of female scientists that realized that they were like almost lesbian birds. Mm-hmm. And they realized that all of their research kind of had been misplaced because it was about how they were taking care of the eggs. And when it wasn't a male and a female, same-sex birds would take care of the eggs. And it just, of course, it's created controversy in science because they've had to go back now and change the basis. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's really, I've never heard of that. Post the link. Yeah, but still, you would say what finally established the truth is still science, right? It doesn't matter which scientist. It doesn't matter. Previous scientists were wrong, but still, it's not some fault. People will say, "Hey, these guys are wrong," but still, some scientists don't study it and found it out it was wrong. So, what you rely upon
was their own observation. Was their own observation of going up and actually checking the sex of the birds, which is an assumption that basically people have said, oh well, if this looks this way and this looks this way, we're good to go.
Right. So that example shows that scientists are also ordinary human beings. There were a lot of biases, ideologies, and prejudices among many scientists. And maybe sometimes even worse than ordinary folks. But on the other hand, if you understand science as a whole, as say a separate subject, rather than understand it from an individual person, then you would say the science has an objective side at least, right? You have to have you suppose you have experiment, you have some discoveries, then you have to be verified by other peers, got publish it, and then got verified by more peers, and then eventually got established. All this process, we hope at least, maybe not guaranteed, but at least to make it more objective.
Is this just a United States point of view for scientists in the United States, or is it a worldwide?
You mean materialism?
Yeah.
It's worldwide. Actually, it's more accepted in other parts of the world than it is here.
Could you say that, yes, the scientific method should always take, and when theories are drawn, that should take, priority, or that should take primacy, but would you allow for a possibility of substance dualism? As a scientist, as a researcher, as somebody who has a lot of experience in this field, would you allow for a motive?
Yeah, in that sense, your question that whether substance dualism is a legitimate scientific hypothesis. It is. It has been for a long time. Just now that it turned out it's not the best one. So the question is not whether it's a hypothesis. It's possible that it turned out. The question is whether it is true or not. And today it shows, the evidence shows at least that it's probably not true.
See, my perspective is I don't think it's a legitimate scientific theory. It doesn't seem like, because you can't really test it. It's not really testable or reproducible. What I'm saying, though, is it possible that it does exist in trace amounts? Like, kind of like last class, you were saying, like, phenomena happen to people, or you're talking about that guy in Johnny Carson, we can't. There's certain things just can't be reproduced, and certain experiences that we have that they just go beyond, anything that we could really describe. And I'm not saying that that's scientific, and I'm not even saying that it necessarily tangibly exists, but is it possible that the unscientific exists? Is it possible that the indescribable, inexplicable exist independent of scientific theory?
Yeah, so there are two questions here. One is that some hypotheses seem to be harder to test rather than to be completely untestable. For example, the Uri-Geller phenomena, psi phenomena. I wouldn't say they are not testable at all. It's just sometimes we have sort of ad hoc hypotheses, actual hypotheses, sometimes we fail in the experiment. So it's really harder to test it completely. So there are a lot of studies actually to test the psi phenomena, psychic phenomena, and many of them claim they have very successful test results, and they have so-called telepathy test. And in 1930s, in the Duke University, J.B. Ryan, a famous psychologist, wide respected, he did a lot of tests on paranormal psychology. And one test he did is he tested a theology student who claimed to have the power of clairvoyance inherited from his mother. And he did a series of experiments, maybe 8 sequences of experiments in a span of 1 year. And it is well designed in the sense that suppose you have one person who are showing some cards on the table. And that text, I think that person appears. And the person sat in the library 500 yards away from the test room. And you synchronize the clock, starting from 10 o'clock. And for every minute, you put one new card on the deck. And the person supposed to be able to see the card from a distance. And if you mark down the spot, okay, what's the card today? So-called psychic cards, have river, stars, sounds, 5 symbols on the card. And he wrote down one of them. So each sequence has 25 cards, so 25 minutes. And after each 25 minutes, you have 5-minute break, and you do the second sequence. And the design is actually pretty good, right? In ordinary sense, you couldn't see the card from 500 yards away, in a closed room. And if you do have the clairvoyance ability, you should be able to see. But if you don't, then you just run chances of guessing shouldn't be over 10%, or around 10%. Some results, J.B. Ryan found really statistically impossible. In the sense that if you don't have the clairvoyance, then it's impossible for you to have the result. It's almost 33% of correct answers. 33, still most of wrong, but 33 is much better than 20. So in that sense, it's statistically significant.
It's not just chance at that.
Yeah, not just chance anymore. It shows that it must be, it seems that that person must have some power. But it's very controversial because, again, the test cannot be repeated, and there's some challenge that the person and J.B. Ryan's assistant seem to collaborate a little bit. So there always, a chance of that. And some people would say, okay, the peers, actually marked results after they came to the office to see the original record. So, even you get 5 or 10 right, you'll increase the chance.
And I don't want to trivialize. I don't want to call it paranormal. I guess paranormal has sort of like a connotation to it.